I never intended to become a healer. I think most people don't. You kind of get shoved onto the path. In my journey of finding self love and healing trauma, I found a real passion for starting to help others. I always say when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. It doesn't mean that you ignore everything else, but it means that you prioritize your healing journey until you get to a point that are filled with so much love and feel so whole that now your energy can shift and support those around you.
Put your hand on your heart, look up at the sky, smile and say, hey, I'm alive. Thanks for being alive with me today. Hello and welcome to Be Alive with your host, Kate Manser. That's me. Today I am very pleased and touched to have a colleague and a classmate of mine on the show. Alexandra Keller is on a mission to raise the vibration of our collective consciousness. Alexandra is an energy healer and a spiritual advisor, and she is also in her Masters of Science program to better understand and study spirituality, psychology, consciousness, and beyond. Before we get into your story and your gifts and your wisdom, I would love it if you could just welcome us in by introducing yourself and taking us through a grounding experience so that we can get out of our hairy day and into the moment.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's truly an honor, and what a way to celebrate the end of the first year of school together. So I'm super excited to be here. And yeah, let's take a moment to kind of drop in and receive whatever comes through in this podcast today. So if you're at home or driving or doing the dishes, whatever it is you might be doing in this moment, I invite you to just take a pause and close your eyes. If you're driving, keep them open. But take a pause to turn your focus inward. And let's all take a deep collective breath together, breathing in through your nose, all the way into your belly. And a big sigh out. Just letting go of anything from the day, from the week, coming into this present moment that led you here for a reason. Perhaps some information is going to be coming through that's going to help you on your journey. And so take another deep breath in, this time breathing into your heart space, feeling your heart expand and open to receive whatever messages are coming through today. And a big sigh out. And let's take one more deep breath in. Taking a pause at the top, feeling gratitude for this breath, for this moment we're all sharing together, for this beautiful life that we have the privilege to experience. And as you exhale, returning back into the space, feeling present, open, and ready to receive whatever transmissions come through to you today.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I needed that. I needed that. Yeah. 3 deep breaths and just open to receive. I perceive you as very spiritually connected and someone who has had a journey of learning how to wield that power. What is it like for you staying open to messages on the daily? What are the highs? What are the lows and the in-betweens?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like it has been such a journey to get here, and to stay open is work in itself. And I like to think of myself as the vessel for life to work through, the channel for the divine to work through. So whether it's in my work or in my daily life, every day, I take a moment in prayer and I say, I release my ego to be the vessel. And in that process, it's a continued commitment to just to let things flow through. And with my intuition, there's always messages coming through. If I'm deep in practice, if I'm in Reiki, like I see things. Like when I go into meditation, I can see energy fields and I receive specific messages. But then just going throughout my day, it took a lot of practice to notice when is my intuition just speaking to me versus when is my ego mind coming in when I'm doing something. And what I've noticed is when there's resistance to something, that's usually my ego mind trying to protect me. And so I've gotten very good at catching that and being like, let me take a pause. And anytime I feel myself close up or maybe my heart close because I'm trying to protect myself, I like do my own practices that I share with clients. I take a moment to breathe. I send some Reiki to myself and I just tell myself to keep staying open because that is the work of this life, right? Staying open, staying in a state of receiving and giving unconditional love. And I think all of that connects back to how, especially we as women, move intuitively through this world.
Can you repeat that, for lack of a better term, prayer that you said about the ego that you say to yourself? It sounds like every morning.
Yeah.
Can you say that again so I can really let it sink in for myself and anyone who's listening? That was beautiful.
I release my ego and allow myself to be the vessel for life to flow through.
I release my ego and allow myself to be the vessel for life to flow through.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
Sometimes I'll switch it up, the divine, the universe, kind of whatever I'm feeling that day. Like being resistant to things happening in life, then I'll say life. If I'm feeling like I really need to trust more in the universe and what's presenting in my reality, I'll say the universe. I kind of flow with things. I never have one set way of doing things. And I think that fluidity also allows freedom in the practice.
Yeah. I'm struck with this sense that you have this really strong foundation of values that helps you to do the work that you do with healing, but also to exist in the madness of our world, right? So, when you say, oh, I start my day with this prayer of releasing my ego so that God, the universe, can work through me, what are some of these values? Because routine is hard, ritual is hard. Maintaining spirituality while you're doing your masters and working and moving and I'm sure you're in relationships and all that's hard. So what would you say are your values that like the foundational values that keep you on this spiritual path?
Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of different values that I incorporate that make me who I am. But the things that really help keep me on the spiritual path, the first thing I always think about is, am I practicing what I preach, right? When I am, working with clients, I'm telling them, okay, you're getting Reiki, but Reiki is the tool to open you. You have to be consistent, continue your meditation practice or journal or yoga or whatever you do that helps you stay clear and allows you to stay in touch with your energy and the divine. And so I can't tell someone to do that if I'm not mirroring that work myself. And, there are times where life gets really busy and hectic. With the master's degree, I'm planning my wedding, I'm traveling nonstop. So, I understand when people are saying I'm busy. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm telling you to create the time, I need to create the time too. And, you know, I also say that you don't do these practices for when you don't just do these practices when things are going bad. You have to do them when things are going well, because that's what helps you maintain. And so if you start to notice things are getting a little off track, okay, go back to the practices and don't just lean on them when you're going through the tough times. Actually dedicate yourself to it when you're in the good times. Approach it with a sense of joy and love and gratitude that, wow, I get to do this practice. So that's a big one for me, is practicing what I preach. As I mentioned, releasing the ego. That's tough work.
What does that look like for
Yeah.
Alexandra? Where do you get into quagmires and trouble with your
Mhm.
ego?
Yeah. I say the word releasing, and I think when I'm doing my healing work, it's definitely a release. I have to be gone to be able to have the energy flow through. But in life, our ego is part of our personality. Like, we can't just, if you lock the ego away and don't deal with it, that's spiritual bypassing, right? So it's not so much a release, but it's learning to integrate it and know when things are being driven from ego and when things are being driven from spirit. So kind of going back to that intuitive voice and noticing, like, is my ego in the driver's seat? And constantly checking in with myself to be like, am I doing this from, and the ego wants to protect us, right? So I check in, am I doing this from a place of fear, or from a place of worry, or any of these kind of lower vibrational frequencies? And so, like, releasing and integrating the ego. And then the number one thing that I always come back to, which again goes with this ego work, it's like they all kind of interconnect, is unconditional love coming from a place of love. I would say this is my like top value because love is the highest vibrational frequency. And all of the good emotions and good work that we do in this world comes from a place of love. And so even when I have a commitment to something, I ask myself, am I doing this out of a place of fear or should? Or am I doing this from a place of love and because I truly want to do that?
Love as the
Yeah.
foundational value. Yeah, many years ago, I wrote this post-it that said, "How can I be more loving?" And I actually just recently wrote it on the front of my journal. But I really admire the way that you involve that in your everyday life and your everyday decisions because it's so easy to get lost. But yeah, you're coming back to love.
Again, all of these things, like it's beautiful to talk about, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. Even, as a spiritual advisor and energy healer, I tell my clients, like, I have to come back to the practices. I have to constantly check myself. Similar to how you had this kind of note written on your wall, I like, in my journal for a long time, I had to write, like, I am unconditional love. In my meditations, I would be going to my heart space and going, I am unconditional love. I am unconditional love. And then, my partner might say something that triggers me and I behave in a way that I'm not proud of. And then I have to sit and be like, you're not coming from a place of love. You're coming from a place of fear. You're coming from a place of old wounds. What would love do here? And that's a phrase that I learned from one of my Reiki teachers, and it really stuck with me. And so when I'm in a difficult situation, what would love do here? And I come back and I'm like, okay, opening my heart. How would someone with an open heart respond to this situation? It doesn't instantly solve everything, but it makes life so much more pleasurable and seamless to move through.
Well, and it's the foundation, like you said so beautifully. I think we get caught up in, oh, I need to achieve this, and that's my value as I'm trying to achieve this notoriety or this certain level of income. And I think a lot of that is based on us wanting to be remembered when we die and we want to be admired in our lives. And some of that is ego. And I also think that something like being remembered and loved is just part of the human
Mhm.
condition. But it's so easy to get off track and to have this it comes, I think, partially down to our self-worth, which is, when we're putting our self-worth in our achievements or how much money we have or these extrinsic things, then at least in my personal experience, I come to hollowness, and I've come to hollowness many times when I've gotten off track. But as you speak, I also just get this sense of you've had a long journey with self-love. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I would say that you can't come from a place or exist in a state of love without self love. And
Wow.
I, I really appreciate what you were saying of, moving through life, how sometimes the focus is on like achievements or a certain level of success. And that comes from a place of not having that inherent self worth or acknowledging your self worth, which makes us place our worth on things outside of us. And I definitely went through that journey. I was in a household where there was a lot of healthy love lacking. And I, was starving for this sense of love. Didn't have this sense of worth. I was always placing it outside of myself. When I first moved to Los Angeles, thought I wanted to be in the entertainment industry because I was like, oh, if I'm in the entertainment industry and I'm someone, I'll have all of the love. And so I thought I was going to be a red carpet host, which is just so funny because when actually started getting those gigs, I hated it. I was like, I don't like this. And then I worked at a big TV network and I was working with all these celebrities. I didn't know who they were. I would have to Google them before like I would greet them. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not passionate about this industry. I don't know who these people are. I don't like being on red carpets. And I had to sit and be like, where is this coming from? And I realized this dream that I thought I had was built on a false narrative of not having the self worth, not having the self love, and feeling like I needed it outside of myself. I never intended to become a healer. I think most people don't. You kind of get shoved onto the path. And in my journey of finding self love and healing trauma, I found a real passion for starting to help others. And it just grew from there. And I think self love is definitely the foundation to just bring more love into your life in all aspects.
Wow. Yeah, what a
Yeah.
journey from really such a high focus on external adulation and love. And then it sounds like that really kicked off your journey of deep love for yourself. And I know that for me, I had to do this. I had 2022 is a really intense year for me. I went through all this self-worth issues because I was like, "Oh, I'm not famous yet. I'm not speaking on the stages that I want to be speaking on. I'm not making the money that and I was lost because I was getting my self-love from the outside, or that's where I thought I was supposed to get it from, and I didn't have it inside. And so I had to go through this exercise, and I don't know if you did this as well, but I went through this mental exercise, and it wasn't just a one-time thing. It was something that it was a practice that I did. But I had to imagine not speaking on any stages and not having the money and not having any fame and literally just living in a house in a normal neighborhood by myself. And the funny thing that I would imagine is I would just imagine all you do, Kate, is you live your like simple, sweet life and you bring soup to your neighbor when she's sick. Can you love yourself if that is your life? And I couldn't at first. It took time. But as I continued with this visualization of letting go of the fame and the money and all of that and just bringing the soup to the neighbor when she's sick, that was like this weird thing that helped me build self-love for myself. And now I'm still, doing my work and who knows what will come of it, but I feel so much more in myself. Does that reflect your journey with self-love at all?
Wow. Well, I mean, a different practice, but I have to say, I love that practice that you just shared. It's almost like an exposure therapy of sorts to like your worst fear and then working to love yourself through that. And it is so beautiful. Wow. Do you feel like, okay, I'll answer your question, but I have a question for you. Do you feel like after practicing that, your message and what you started to share shifted because it was coming more from this place of love versus wanting to get all the accolades for your speaking?
I don't know that my message shifted as much as my energy shifted. I definitely had desperate girl energy before, or desperate person energy, rather, where it was like, I need it. I want it. Where is it? It's not happening. I'm late. I'm behind. Everybody's in front of me. Everybody's more successful than me. It was just this desperate, you've probably heard the term hungry ghost before. It was like this hungry ghost energy that I would literally have people emailing me being like, you changed my life, but it wouldn't hit my heart because it wasn't like, on Entertainment Weekly or whatever fantasy I had at the time. And so I don't think my message is kind of the same, but the energy behind it has changed drastically. I don't have that energy anymore. Now I'm literally just doing the same thing because I love it and because I know I'm meant to do it. And it feels so much better.
Wow. I love that practice. It's like that subtle energy shift. People might not be able to, they don't know what it is, but they can feel it. And for you, you're actually able to receive. So, like the messages of people, of the impact you're making, and now you can be in a state to receive. That's really beautiful. So, self love, I always talk about the heart chakra. It governs giving and receiving. And like people may think, oh, I have this open heart because I give and I give. And I'm like, well, if you're not receiving, then it's not working at its full capacity. The heart chakra's not fully open because it's both. It goes both ways. But to circle back and ask about my journey of what I did, it was more like I hit a wall of something needs to change. I was like, I'm not happy in my career. I'm making kind of self destructive choices because I'm not happy, like trying to fill this hole. And so I really just one day I was sitting in my room and I was like, what am I going to do? And this voice came down and was like, align your chakras and meditate. So I started like doing this chakra meditation every day. And I started to see that things were really out of alignment for me. And that's where I started noticing, okay, there is deeper work that I have to do here. And similar, I wasn't visualizing myself giving my neighbor soup, but I kept saying, what is a meaningful life for me? And what does impact look like? And if that is just having an open heart and being a light for the people around me, that is a life well lived. And so it became less of a how can I, first it was how can I get everyone to love me? Then it was like, how can I help everyone? And then it became, how can I love myself? How can I show the people in my life that I love them? And how can I just make an impact to the lives that I can actually touch because that creates a ripple effect. And so it was like external to a full flip internal back to then creating an impact externally, but not looking for that validation because the validation came from within. And that goes back, it all connects. That goes back to releasing the ego. Because when I release
Yeah.
the ego and I'm the vessel, it's no longer what am I doing? It's how am I being a tool for spirit to flow through and for that divine will to manifest on earth.
So anybody listening, think about, what Alexandra just said in that 3 stages that she had. And this may or may not reflect your stage or my stage, but, are you obsessively looking for validation from others? Are you maybe in a phase where you are trying to get love and gain love by obsessively helping others? Or are you in a stage where you have filled your cup up so much with self love and self appreciation that you're then overflowing such that you're helping others and getting love from others? So I feel like that's this, like, you just laid out this amazing 3 phases that I hadn't really thought about before. It absolutely echoes my experience of trying to get love, trying to help everybody, and then and people think it's selfish, right? People think it's selfish to focus on ourselves. But think about the people who just overflow love. And like, I can see looking, that is you now, right? Like, you're so loving and kind, glowing. And I can tell that you just have this wholeness about you, that it's not selfish. What is it?
Oh, thank you. Oh, I received that. But I agree when you say that people think it's selfish. There's this societal narrative that, self love or choosing yourself or putting yourself first is selfish. And, you know, people can kind of take that and twist it in a way that benefits them. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about doing your individual healing, which then shifts the collective. Because if we talk about, this kind of gets into our coursework, consciousness, and us all being connected on some level, when we heal the individual, that creates a ripple of healing in the collective. I always say when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. And so, actually, by focusing on your healing journey, it doesn't mean that you ignore everything else, but it means that you prioritize your healing journey until you get to a point that are filled with so much love and feel so whole that now your energy can shift and support those around you.
Without
Right.
you having to say a word, right? Like, and there's something about someone who has that inner peace and inner self love, who has spent a lot of time working on that, on self worth, on self love, that it shifts the energy of the room. And it always makes me think about people like you, people like my friend Dan Friedenberg. Dan was this guy who did all of this cool stuff. He was an executive at Google. He started a nonprofit. He had this cool side hustle. And in his spare time, he climbed mountains for fun. And that's all, like, really cool. But the reason that Dan was such a role model for me was not because he did that cool stuff. It was because he had so much fun while he was doing it. He was so vibrant. And I just feel like that's what you describe, number one, and what you embody. I see you enjoying your life and having fun and walking the talk. That's more impactful than anything that we can do or achieve, is that energy that we radiate and the energy that we bring to any room and any engagement and any video or anything that we might do.
Oh my gosh. I love that you say that and that you share that example because actually just sent this out in my newsletter this morning about June being the lightest month of the year and taking time for play and how we're in this like transitional period of going into a really playful month and season. And I think there's this misconception that, like, if you're a healer or a coach or a therapist or any kind of like spiritual counselor, you have to live a life of austerity and everything has to be like, oh, greetings, And when I'm in ceremony and I'm channeling, Alex is gone. So yeah, I carry a little bit of a different energy, but we're also here for the human experience and we are here to play. And so, I am multidimensional. I can be a healer and lead ceremony and then also be on stage twerking at a festival. Like
Yes.
that's fun for me. And so I really try to encourage people to not put yourself into a box of what you think things should be or how you're supposed to be perceived, which again goes back to that looking for external validation. And when you feel whole and in love with life, it allows you to embrace your work and your personal life and your interpersonal romantic relationships, everything from this place of love, play, fun, joy, bliss, all those high vibrational frequencies.
And it comes back to the question that you asked yourself, and then you thereby invite us to ask, which is you spent time thinking and meditating and reflecting on, you said, what is meaningful to me? What is meaningful to me? Right? Like trust me, I'm as guilty as anybody else. Like I have my focus on the computer or the phone or like something, but to sit back and reflect on like truly or journal, what is meaningful to you? Is play meaningful to you? Is bringing soup to your neighbor meaningful to you? Because it sounds like that's what led you to your healing journey, to self-love, is asking yourself, what is meaningful to me? Can you take us through because it's really brave to step into a healer path because it's alternative and people judge it. And it's also it can be very destabilizing in a lot of ways. And I'd love to hear about your path in that.
Yeah. Well, especially coming from a small town in central Pennsylvania. So let's just start there for a second. I grew up in a very small town in central Pennsylvania. Some might refer to this area as Pennsyltucky. It's a beautiful area and, lots of nature. And I had wonderful friendships, lifelong friendships that have come from growing up in that place. But I would say it's definitely not progressive minded culturally. We didn't talk about, especially when I was growing up, mental health, spirituality, mindfulness, meditation wasn't in our vocabulary. So as you said, this was a very alternative path for me from what I had known. And I think coming back to that question of what is meaningful for me, like I said, I was working in an industry that I know a lot of people wanted to be in. People dreamed of being in it. And I just was like, I'm not having fun here. This isn't my dream. Why am I doing it? And that led me to what is meaningful for me. And when I first started those meditation practices, I had experiences of seeing colors and having visions and getting downloads. And I just thought, this must be what it's like for everyone when they meditate. Like I didn't know any better. And so I developed this very communicative relationship with spirit, if that makes sense, because I was
Yeah.
receiving this information. And so to me, that was just like, that was normal. I didn't have anyone to tell me differently. And building that relationship with spirit. And to me, I was like, wow, this is something meaningful. This is, when you have a transcendent experience, it feels like that's more real than anything. Right. So you're like, this is the true reality. And that was meaningful. And so I kept setting out to explore that and to explore myself beyond this human form, to explore beyond the five senses. Sometimes people can get into that world and never really come back down. And so it was part of, okay, this is very meaningful to me, but how do I apply this to my earthly experience? How do I take this newfound connection with divine, spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it, and how do I make that make sense for me in this earthly experience, and also bring that to other people that I know can benefit from this? And it didn't start out as, let me just guide you through a healing session. It started out with, friends, hey, I don't know if you've experienced this, but some crazy things have been happening to me in meditation. Maybe we should all meditate together under the full moon and I'll guide something and see if anything happens for you. And people started having really visceral experiences and it just grew, and there was no choice. This comes back to being the vessel. It was like spirit said, this is your path now. And it just kept presenting themselves. And then it said, okay, you've been working with energy already, but you don't really understand it. Go train in Reiki. Find a Reiki master, go learn from them. You've been working with psychedelic medicine, but you have to learn how to properly integrate this. Go work with a psychedelic healer and learn from them. And so it like became my process of healing, then became a process of learning and then sharing that with my community. So coming from this place of wholeness, healing myself, and it's always a continued journey of healing, but coming to this place where I felt like my cup was so full and I had learned enough that I could now share this with my community. And that meant just impacting the people around me, my friends. And then from that, it grew. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm a healer.
Yeah. To do the journey that you've done also takes a tremendous amount of courage and surrender that because
Wow.
I know personally there's been many times in my life where I have had that still small voice, or I've had that intuitive voice that said, do this thing. And I was like, no, I will not. And then years go by, whether it's getting out of a marriage or following a particular path or whatever. I think a lot of us are really professional at getting the message that we're supposed to do something and then just like pretending it didn't happen, or starting and then not getting the results that we hoped and then getting distracted. So, it took a tremendous amount of courage and tenacity for you to hear the voice, to listen to the voice, and then have that dedication to continue the practice to get you to where you are today.
Well, thank you. I do agree. It takes aligned action. The universe can send you the nudges and the whispers and the signs, but you have to take the aligned action. That's part of manifestation, or just part of seeing any goal come to fruition. But I want to say that brings up like a really funny story that I want to share about, when you get that nudge, like you said, and then you ignore it. And then you're like, okay, I have to do this. So when I was working on healing certain traumas, I went down to Peru and I went through a beautiful ayahuasca ceremony. At the time, I was working for a psychedelic telemedicine startup. I was running integration for prescription ketamine that was for anxiety, depression. And I took a break to go down to Peru. It was my birthday. I was like, I want to go through working with these indigenous shamans just to take my journeying to the next level. And I tell you, that was that experience was one of the most transcendent, life altering experiences of my life. And I actually have a tattoo from it, from this little snake
Mm,
here that I got,
cool.
because the ayahuasca often comes in the form of snake medicine. And I had this vision. I was asking at the time, what is my path? I knew that I was a healer, but I was like, well, I want direct guidance. What should I do? Where should I focus my healing work? And that's just usually not how spirit communicates to us. So I had this full transcendent experience. And in the vision, I picked up a snake, and a snake bit me, but it didn't hurt. And it gave me, and this was in an ayahuasca vision, not in real life, just to be clear. It sent healing energy through my body. And then after it did that, the snake died because it had given me all of its energy. And I picked the snake up and sent it the energy it gave me and brought it back to life. And I said it's so funny. It's like my dramatic saying in my ayahuasca journey. I looked at this snake and said, the reciprocity of life. and and I came back from my journey, and like the medicine just told me, like, your job is to be a healer. Just focus on the healing, focus on the healing. And I'm like, I
Okay.
want more direct guidance. Just tell me directly what I need to hear. So I share this with the maestro through our translator. And when he hears the story about the snake, his face lights up and he's saying something in Shipibo. She's meant to work with the medicine. The medicine presents itself as a snake. You need to come learn from us.
Oh,
Funny
wow.
thing is, a honor, like a true honor. But me, in my ego mind at the time, after I was just asking spirit for more direct, tell me exactly what I need to do, this shaman invites me to come learn from them. And I'm like, I cannot do that. I'm working at a startup. I have to take care of everything going on. I have to go back to the States. Like, thank you so much for this honor. It's great meeting you. See ya. See you in another life. And I go back to the US and I keep working for this company for a year. And I keep going into my meditations and it keeps calling me. The medicine keeps calling. It's like nudging, hey, you asked what you were supposed to do. This person is offering you this once in a lifetime experience. So finally, a year later, it was like one of those moments where I ignored it for a year. I was also so stressed out and burnt out working at this startup. And Spirit was like, we already told you what you need to do. And so that journey led me then to go live in a teepee in the Sacred Valley in Peru in isolation, aside from the maestros, the shaman, for 30 days, learning how to work with the medicine. I learned how to brew the ayahuasca medicine. They call it the initiation into the shamanic path. And that really opened up my vessel to a whole nother, I don't want to say another level, but another way of working with the healing energy and being able to channel beings, being able to see more accurately into my client's field. It opened my vision more. And so that was that experience of getting the nudge so clear. I ask spirit, what should I do? I ignore it.
You're
I
like, that's
leave.
not it.
I have to go back to work. I leave for a year. I'm so burnt out. And then I'm like, oh, that's what the direction was. That's what they were telling me to do.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's amazing. And what an amazing journey. I mean, being in the jungle and the teepee and getting those lessons. And, one thing that I also really appreciate about you is you have this incredible dichotomy about you. Like, you are full woo. Let's just put it out there. Alexandra is full woo. And just like you said, as you've been going through your healing journey, you're like, how do I incorporate this in the real world? And you're also getting a master's of science in psychology and consciousness. So you're fully in the woo woo and you're fully in trying to increase the breadth and depth of those gifts in real life. How hard is that for you? Like getting messages from spirit and studying psychology papers that, are written by non-spiritual people.
Oh my gosh, Kate. The master's degree has been a journey in itself. And it's true. Like I am this very woo-woo. The way that I experience life, it's having full-on psychic visions, but then I have to go into a master's degree course and talk about things in a scientific way. And the reason that I did that is because coming from where I am, from central Pennsylvania, I was naturally skeptic. Let me start by saying that I was skeptic. I didn't believe in any of this stuff until it started happening to me. And so I was like, how do I communicate this and make it available for people that might be really skeptic or are really looking toward the science? And I was like, I need to be a bridge. If I'm going to bring this back to the earthly plane, if I'm really going to help people, I need to meet people where they're at. And what would I needed to hear 15 years ago for this to make sense? Like when I was totally just closed off to anything not happening in the material world, right? And so it's been funny in the master's degree program because I took shamanistic psychology
Yeah, me
this
too.
semester, entheogens and psychedelics. I lived with shamans for a month and I helped run a psychedelics company. So experientially, I have done a lot in this field, but looking at it from this more kind of now reverse engineering it from this academic perspective and reading these extensive papers on it, it's definitely my brain is being pulled in so many different directions. And I'm like, okay, now I'm intellectualizing everything that I've experienced intuitively or experientially. It's definitely helped in the way that I communicate with certain people, especially, getting on certain client calls and knowing, okay, how do I explain this in a way that's going to help them? And even, in my programs now, like I have therapists coming to learn Reiki from me because they're seeing it as a tool that they can use in their kit. And so to me, it's starting to create that ripple where it is, the traditional Western world hasn't fully embraced it, but there are those that are open to it. And to me, that's like all I could ask for is we have these
Yeah.
practitioners that are starting to adopt more holistic practices.
Well, and we need
Yeah.
everybody. We need people that are fully in the woo. We need people that are fully in the science. And we need people that are bridges like you. Talk to me about the journey that you've had going from a skeptic to the story of your tattoo. You told me a little bit about the story of your
Mm,
tattoo, going from a
okay.
skeptic to now believing that you can create your reality.
Okay. So I will say while I was a skeptic about, you know, spirit, psychics, energy healing, all of that, there was something inside of me that always knew that I could have a better life. I grew up, like I said, in not the most supportive environment, not the healthiest environment. And I, when I was 18, I just was like, this isn't it. I mean, before I was 18, we'll say in high school, because I remember I thought of this tattoo idea when I was 16. I was like, as soon as I turn 18, I'm getting this. But I remember looking around and just being like, everyone's unhappy. Everyone around me that I see is unhappy. They don't seem fulfilled in life. They kind of have this mindset of these are the cards I've been dealt and this is what I have to deal with. And I was like, that's not going to be my life. So at 18, went out, like got my first tattoo, which says inspire a beautiful life. And I got it on my hip, which was, the thing to do back then in these like big cursive letters. Totally not the style that I would get now. Also, now my hips have grown, so it's like slowly migrated closer to my butt. It's just like hilarious that I have this tattoo that says inspire a beautiful life like on my butt.
Yeah, and it's getting
But
bigger, right? Like, it's
it's
growing and you're inspiring more.
yes, it's expanding the message. But I got that as a promise to myself that I was going to live a beautiful life. And by living beautifully, it would inspire others that they too could live beautifully, which kind of shows my ethos and values even back then, even when I was in the hardest times of my life, just knowing that I wanted to be that ripple. I wanted to support people. I wanted to help others. But at that time, my cup was so empty. And so I knew that I wanted to inspire people, but I was like, well, to do that, I really got to live a beautiful life myself. And then, through going through the entertainment industry, realizing that wasn't for me, going through my healing journeys, learning like everything that I know and continue to learn, I really began to shift into creator consciousness, victim versus creator consciousness. I know you're really familiar with these terms, but for those that might not know, when we're in this state of victim consciousness, we're kind of looking at the world and saying everything's happening to me, why me? A lot of times it can feel very isolating. I'm the only person going through these problems or everything's unfair. But the problem with that mentality is it just creates more of those experiences because our outer world is a reflection of our inner world, right? It's all about our perception. And so when you get stuck in this victim mentality, it just kind of creates this cycle. I remember feeling like there was a lot of chaos in my life and a lot of instability. And I was like, well, what is the common denominator here? It's me. It's me. So I set out on this healing journey. And at the beginning of the healing journey, I wasn't thinking, let me shift into creator consciousness. I didn't even have the vocabulary for that. But over time, as I started learning and I started opening and seeing how I could truly shift my reality and that everything is what I perceive it to be. And by shifting my perception, I can shift what's happening around me. It's not just also like surrendering, it's taking the aligned action as well. So, like the combination of aligned action, trust in the universe, being the vessel, shifting perception, I shift it into this creator consciousness. And that is essentially the idea that I am co creating with the universe. I'm co creating my earthly experience. And I got this tattoo. It was exactly 10 years later. And I didn't even realize until you had kind of asked me this question about myself when you had asked me earlier about, share something that's interesting. I didn't even realize until that moment that it had been exactly 10 years from the time I got the tattoo that said inspire a beautiful life to then getting the second tattoo that it says, I create my reality. I'll show you here. And it's in my handwriting.
Whoa.
And reality is bendy because I create it. It's shaped.
Wow.
I just got it there to remind me because, like I said, I always come back to the practices. We're human, things come up, triggers come up. I can get into that mindset of, oh, why me? And then I go back and I look, okay, what is this here to teach me? When I have something hard come up, especially if I find it continuing to show up in my reality, I'm like, okay, how am I perpetuating this cycle to learn a lesson? There's a reason why this keeps coming up. And there's something here that I have not learned yet. So, what do I need to learn to shift my reality to stop this cycle or this pattern? And I continuously look down at my arm when I need that reminder. And yeah, it was a beautiful full circle moment. This tattoo is a little bit
Wow.
more appropriately placed than my other one.
Wow. I really appreciate your openness. And you have a humility about you that I also is very necessary, I think, in a healer, but isn't always seen. I create my reality. And there's a tremendous amount of ownership in that, right? It's okay, I'm creating my reality. But then again, going back to that humility when things aren't going wrong, instead of going into victim mindset, which trust me, I'm working on deconditioning my victim mindset right now too, looking at ourselves and saying, okay, what's my hand in this and how can I change it? As opposed to, like you said, oh, everything's happening to me. And I love how you made the reality bendy to remind yourself we
Thank
can change
you.
at any time, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, we can change at any time. And isn't that the beauty of it? Like we have that power within us. And I think
So,
that,
how was that
oh,
paper for
go ahead.
you?
How was the paper? The paper was a doozy. It was a doozy. I feel like I got it to a good place and I feel very honest in the way that I wrote it and it feels great for me. We'll see, what the academic powers have in mind what they say about it, but I feel very good about it. What about you?
Yeah, so Alexandra and I just turned in a roughly 20-page paper for our spiritual psychology class. I feel like I came back from the dead today, seeing the sky for the first time
Mm,
after a week.
yeah. Well, you're a writer, so I feel like for you, do you have a lot of fun with it? How do you approach it?
Oh, I mean, being back in school again has been the most humbling thing for me because I'm like, oh, I'm a writer. And then I was getting bad grades on my papers because academic writing is a whole other thing. So I really had to just bring my ego back as I should. So that's a great experience in and of itself. But also just relearn a new style of writing, which I'm sure in the long run will help to bring breadth to my
Mhm.
writing. But no, it definitely hasn't been easy because I'm a writer. In some ways, I think that it actually made it more complicated or a little bit harder because I thought I had it and then I definitely didn't have it.
Okay. Yeah, I resonate with that. That's kind of what I was meaning. Like, I feel really good about it. Like, I was honest in my writing. It's me, but we'll see what the academic people have to say because, I haven't had to write like this in a very long time. And also, there is a part of, how you said being a writer sometimes is detrimental because, like, you have a certain style of how you like to write. For me, it's like having experienced so much of this and now and like just kind of
Oh.
having things in my knowledge bank. It's like I write all these things and I'm like, okay, now I need to go find sources that validate this. And I'm
And
like,
what if they don't
like,
then?
yeah. I'm like, can't I just write this from my brain, from my experience? I'm like, this
Not in
is
an
what I signed up for.
MSC.
Yeah, I'm like, this is what I signed up for, and this is the challenge that's helping me grow, and it's exciting, and I'm really grateful for it. And grateful to be doing it with you, and that it brought us
Yeah.
together.
Well, Alexandra, like I said, after this, I just appreciate being in your energy even more than I already did. So, for anyone listening who's also feeling like they want to be in Alexandra's energy, how can they do that?
Oh, well, find me on Instagram, Healer Alexandra. HealerAlexandra.com is my website, and I offer remote Reiki. I offer Reiki training for anyone that feels like, oh, maybe I'm on the path of the healer. I have a Reiki training course coming up at the end of June. I also do chakra healing programs to go through each chakra that relates to different areas of your life. So that, really gets down to the practical work of bringing this all this healing and wisdom into your earthly experience and how it affects you in daily life. So there's lots of goodness and different offerings, but you can reach out on Instagram, say hi. I love making new friends.
What is something that makes you feel alive in life, Alexandra?
Oh, it's something that makes me feel alive. I'm just thinking about the experience I just had today, which was jumping in the ocean. As soon as I get into the ocean, I just am a little kid filled with joy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is something about the water, and I just imagine you just jumping in there with so much glee and joy,
Yeah.
especially the day after we turn in our paper and just, I'm free for a few months.
Yeah, yeah, I've been trying to do it every day, jump in the ocean. There's also, coming from the woo-woo side, I feel like the ocean is very energetically cleansing, and so it's a baptism. I get in the ocean, I come out reborn,
Totally.
renewed, and I feel really grateful to be living on this planet. Like, how lucky are we that we get to live on this planet Earth that has incredible oceans to jump in, mountains to climb, fields to run in. Nature is so magnificent, and we get to experience all that. That makes me feel alive.
Ah, well, on that take us to church moment. Thank you so much, Alexandra. You are a light and absolutely a healer, and it's been a pleasure to have you share your wisdom on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Be Alive with Kate Manser with me. Truly, I take it as no small honor. You have so much out there you could be listening to. So the fact that you took this time with me and my show, honestly, means absolutely the world to me. I hope that you got some meaning, some purpose, a little dash of aliveness, and definitely some inspiration out of what you heard today. That is always, always my goal. If you liked what you heard, please share this episode with a friend, a confidant, with a mentor. Please, more, darling. Always more, excess, everything. We want it all in this life. So share it and go on your app of choice and leave some stars, leave a review. It helps me buy food for pajamas, and it helps more people find this show so that we can all live just profoundly alive together. It's a beautiful day, y'all. Thank you for being here.